A 30-year-old unsolved burglary or part of a plot to kill President Kennedy. A Crane County rancher and his father don't know what to believe. They hadn't given much thought about the 2 guns stolen out of their barn in the early 60s. After all, that was almost 30 years ago. The guns were gone, the case never solved, so they thought that was the end of it. And it was, until a few years ago when a private investigator from Houston and another man showed up asking lots of questions. Questions the rancher and his father have kept to themselves until now.
They asked me if I had had some guns stolen out here at any time. And I said, yeah, there were 2 guns stolen, a 22 and a 35 Remington that were taken out of the barn. I said, well, what's the connection here? And they said, well, we think these 2 guns may have been used in the assassination of the president. And I said, you've got to be kidding.
But the 2 men were not kidding. They were acting on a tip from an informant who they say had ties to the mob. Joe West, a private investigator from Houston, and Gary Shaw, then co-director of the JFK Assassination Center in Dallas, were the 2 men who visited the Smith Ranch. They had been working extensively on this case for some time when information led them here.
Joe West and I made the trip to Crane, Texas, because of information we had from an informant, a man who had organized crime ties, who said that prior to the assassination he stole rifles from a ranch near Crane, Texas, and delivered them on orders to Jack Ruby in Dallas. And he was of the opinion that at least a part of those weapons were used in the assassination of the president.
Although Shaw would not release the informant's name, he did say he was a large black man who at one time was a heavyweight contender and fought the likes of Sonny Liston and Floyd Patterson.
It was a big track, so it must have been a pretty big man that did it. The first thing I noticed was the barn door being open. I noticed that the guns were gone out of this pickup. The door on the pickup was open.
Could the person who left the footprints along this fence line really belong to West and Shaw's informant?
We felt that there was truth to what the man was saying because of his background in the criminal network.
The Smith Ranch wouldn't be the only stop private investigator West would make in Crane County. The former sheriff says he turned up at his office as well, asking a lot of questions and wanting to see that burglary report on the stolen guns. The sheriff told him he'd be more than happy to oblige, only that report had disappeared.
Becky, I have no idea where it is. We have looked and looked. We've gone back in our old records and looked, but we just haven't come up with a lot of reports as far as that goes.
The informant told Shaw and West that 3 of the guns he sold to Jack Ruby were high-powered, very accurate hunting rifles.
Far superior to the throwdown gun, which is what I call the 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano that Oswald allegedly used, which was a piece of junk.
Pandemonium, but total confusion at this point. Hardly anyone who was more than 30 or 40 feet away from the presidential limousine realized that the president had been shot.
It'd be hard to believe, though, that one of our guns could have possibly done that.
Is there a reason you didn't tell anyone about this before?
They told me, they said, we want you to understand that we would like for you to keep this silent, that they had a man that was fixing to blow the whistle on this whole thing. And I said, well, who is it? And they said, well, we're going to tell you. But they said, we want you to keep silent until you hear about this on TV.
A year later, at a Dallas news conference, Midlander Rickie White made a startling announcement that his father, Roscoe Anthony White, a former Marine and Dallas police officer, took part in the Kennedy assassination. As Deanne Holcomb reports, Rickie's news came after he made a chilling discovery in Paris, Texas.
In July of 1990, Rickie White says he discovered something he believes his father had hidden away in the event of his death. In fact, what he would find inside his grandfather's burned-out attic was so unsettling, Rickie says he couldn't tell anyone, not even researchers at the JFK Assassination Information Center in Dallas.
In the metal container, I told you the items that were in there. Now, Rickie kept this book here and wouldn't give it to us. And we couldn't understand why he wouldn't give it to us. If the orders are in there to kill John Kennedy, what could be worse than killing John Kennedy?
Inside the canister and wrapped in plastic, Rickie found 3 decoded cables with orders to kill John Kennedy. pictures of Ruby shooting Oswald, Roscoe White's dog tags, and this mysterious green book. These are copies of the cables found in the plastic.
It said remarks, Mandarin. Then when Rickie first came to us, he said the diary said his father's code name was Mandarin. Well, lo and behold, it's Mandarin on the cables. It said foreign affairs assignments have been canceled. The next assignment is to eliminate a national security threat to worldwide peace. Destination will be Houston, Austin, or Dallas. Contacts are being arranged now. Orders are subject to change at any time. Reply back if not understood. C. Bowers, OSHA. At the bottom it says RE-rifle, code AAA, destroy. The second cable says same information at the top, says remark Mandarin code A, Dallas, destination chosen. Your place hidden within the department. Contacts are within this letter. Continue on as planned. The third cable dated December 1963 says stay within the department. Witnesses have eyes, ears, and mouths. The next word we can't decipher. Due to the mix-up, the men will be in to cover all misleading evidence soon. Stay as planned. Wait for further orders.
And though the cables would be considered possible evidence in the death of our president, the worst was yet to come. What Rickie couldn't bring himself to talk about with anyone could be found inside the Green Book. Researchers call it the Witness Elimination Book, where Roscoe White had listed those he had murdered.
This is 2 pages out of the Green Book. It's a shorthand book turned upside down, starting in the back, and then newspaper clippings glued onto each page. The pictures on the left is of John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. If you notice, John Kennedy has a slash across his head. That means he's dead. Oswald's dead, and undoubtedly the girl on the right is dead also. But Robert Kennedy's not. Now, the significance of this, at the very bottom, it says, Godhead going after tail later, which means probably Robert Kennedy. And sure enough, he was assassinated later. Now, that phrase was not known until 1980. That's what Carlos Marcello said to one of his mob figures. We got the head now, we're going to have the tail later. In the back of the book, it says 28 people died under witness program, and then a series of numbers which we don't know what they mean, and it's signed Roscoe Anthony White and his signature.
It wouldn't be until Howard, Rickie, and their wives were on their way to Los Angeles to meet with movie director Oliver Stone that Rickie would tell Howard about the Green Book. And though Howard says they met with Stone and he offered to buy the rights to the Roscoe White story, they never mentioned the book that Rickie had taken with them. And as far as accepting Stone's offer, Howard said they turned him down.
I said 2 reasons. One, the story's not fully investigated yet. It's got some flaws. And 2, we're scared to death. If these cables we have are legitimate, there's only 4 of us in the world that know where they are and who has them, and we feel our lives are in danger.
Howard would later work for Stone as the conspiracy consultant on the movie set of his controversial blockbuster, JFK. It was before they left the Los Angeles airport that Rickie gave Howard the Green Book. And as their plane approached the Dallas airport, something would go terribly wrong.
The plane was coming down, almost touching the runway, and it gave full power and took off again, which is very unusual. It was a 767. It circled the airport 2 or 3 times and landed at a remote runway that we didn't even know existed.
Howard says the flight attendants told them to evacuate the plane down the chutes immediately.
So, we're thinking, oh boy, what is this? And I'd taken the Green Book because Rickie had given me the Green Book at the LA airport, and I looked at it and put it in my briefcase. It was in the overhead rack. So when people were trying to get out of the plane, I was going the wrong direction because I was going to get the Green Book out because the diary was already missing. So I got it out, stuck it in my pants.
Fortunately, Howard says he and Rickie and their wives made it down the chute safely without injury. But there were others who weren't so lucky.
We were standing there, a black car drives up, FBI. They're circling the plane. There are men that got out. The plane is sitting there with nobody around it, and these special government cars drive up. So we get at the airport, we finally get back to the center, and I call a friend of mine that works at Delta. I said, what happened on this flight? He said, a bomb threat was called into the LA airport when y'all took off. And in the newspaper article, it says the FBI searched the plane.
Rickie says a small group of independent oil men in Midland now own the rights to the Green Book and are having it researched. He says the book is locked up in a safety deposit box or vault somewhere around the tall city.